This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
This morning on Saturday Breakfast Show, we are talking about how to ask for help. We are having a think about the psychology behind asking for help, what those mental blocks are in terms of getting help, and how we can overcome that to really build community and make the very best of our own lives.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
A very good morning to you. It is Saturday, the 29th of March, 2025. My name is Darren Lester. I am your host here for the Saturday Breakfast Show on Teachers Talk Radio. How are you? How has your week been? Mine has been good. Mine has been good. I like the fact that I'm pretty much able to say that every single week. At the moment, this has been a very successful academic year for me so far. Touch wood, and all of that good stuff. I can't believe that we are almost 2/3 of the way through. Lots of schools are kind of, like I said last week, lots of schools are beginning to wind down, beginning to work their way towards the Easter holiday. I'm at the point now where I feel like I'm out of that rhythm. It's taken me quite a long time, but I am now, I think, out of the regular scholastic rhythm. I teach, in case you have not heard the show before, I teach in an online school, which runs year round. So we don't really get the same holiday time as everybody else. We kind of figure out when we're going to take breaks on our own. But what that kind of means is that all of these big things that I used to count down to as a brick and mortar school teacher, like Easter holidays, Christmas holidays, half terms, all of those things, they don't exist for me anymore. My year isn't chopped up that way anymore. And it was for a little while. I only made this transition last summer. And I still kind of counted down to half term. I still counted down to the Christmas holidays, which I think in part was because, as anybody who has listened to this show for even 5 minutes in the past before knows, that is my favorite time of year. So I kind of really like counting down to things and making the most of that. But also I think, it was something that I had done every single year since I was 4 years old. And so it was just an ingrained part of my makeup. But now it kind of came as a shock to me when I was talking to a friend on Thursday, I think it was, and she said that her school is finishing for Easter next Friday, and I was like, oh yeah, it's that time where everything is starting to wind down. I shouldn't be too surprised. I was filling in my 5-year diary yesterday. I have this journal. I don't know why I'm reaching for it now. You can't see it, but I have this journal, and it's just an A6 size notebook with a double page spread for every day, and each on the left hand side you've got the page broken down into 5 kind of rectangles, each one for a different year, running 2024 through to 2028. And then the right-hand side is a blank page where you can do whatever you like on it. And the idea is that you just record a snippet of each day. And then you can kind of look back over the 5 years when it's done and see how life changed for you in that period of time. I'm not gonna lie, I was influenced. I saw somebody on YouTube with one, and I was like, I need that in my life, because I kind of wish that I'd had one during COVID times, because I think that would have been a really interesting time to track, like especially if you had started before and the COVID period hit right in the middle. I think that would have been really interesting to keep track of. But I didn't, and I wasn't going to kind of go back and pretend that I did. I wasn't going to buy an old one and fake it, although I could have done, I suppose. So instead, I just got one that started last year. And I noticed as I was filling in my days that the 29th of March last year, so today, a year ago, was Good Friday. We are still, I think, a couple of weeks away from Easter this year because it's very, very late. But yeah, it shouldn't have come as a surprise for me that schools are winding down, but it did. It did. And it is quite funny being in my 5-year diary at the moment. Forgive me while I take a bit of a nostalgic trip down memory lane to last year, because I hadn't intended to talk to you about this diary, but we are also coming up to the point where I left my brick and mortar school and made the transition to being online. And that's quite interesting to read through because that was a very bizarre time. And so it is quite funny to see my entries from that and just, yeah, look at where I am a year later. I'm not sure that I've got my new kind of career path figured out, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and that is the main thing. So yeah, that's kind of been my week. It's been nice. It's been straightforward. It's been a bit of a surprise that we are this far into the academic year. I've got a lot done, which is always a good thing. And yeah, just a run-of-the-mill week. But as I've been saying to my pupils this week, when they've told me that they've been having run-of-the-mill weeks too, it's better to have a run-of-the-mill week than a week that is eventful for all the wrong reasons. So we will 100% take that. Thinking of my students this week, of course, I must draw attention to that horrendous earthquake that hit Myanmar and Thailand yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I do find that that with Thailand especially, I find it quite difficult to work out the time change in the time zones. I don't know why. It's just the one country where that really befuddles my brain. But in case you hadn't heard, I think it was 7.7, 7.7 magnitude earthquake hit Myanmar yesterday, resulting in 1,000 deaths. And then there have been aftershocks and other earthquakes felt in China and Thailand as a result of that. I don't have any pupils in China at the moment, but I do have some pupils in Thailand. Luckily, I've checked in with them and they are fine. They are safe. But of course, we do send our thoughts, we send positive energy, we send prayers, we send whatever it is you personally believe in to send out to those people, to the families of the 1,000 people in Myanmar who have already been confirmed dead, to the 6 in Bangkok who have been confirmed dead, the 26 injured, the 47 missing, and to anybody else who may have been affected. According to the parent of one of my pupils who I spoke to just this morning, Bangkok itself is back to normal today. Apparently yesterday was quite stressful, as it would have been. It was quite chaotic, but the city itself seems to be up and running today, which is something that blows my mind. You know, I'm not a geographer, so I don't think very often, to be fair, about earthquakes, about how people build their cities to survive and withstand. And so I think, to me, if in England we had a 7.7 magnitude earthquake, we wouldn't be up and running the next day. We're not built for it. And so it does continually blow my mind. Even countries that I'm much more familiar with in Thailand, countries like China, like Japan, countries I've studied, countries I've visited, it continues to blow my mind how quickly they can get up and running again after a big catastrophe, after a big natural event like this. And I think it really is a testament to the resilience of the people, but also the planning of the towns and the cities. When you are aware that these big things happen and you make plans accordingly. It's all about being deliberate, isn't it? I bang on about deliberate practice a lot on the show in terms of teaching. But I think it's true in every walk of life, regardless of what your hobbies are, what your career is. I think if you do everything deliberately with thought and with the best of intentions, then it's always going to work out the best that it can possibly be.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded program helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Teachers' pay is back in the news in Northern Ireland after Belfast Live reports that teachers have rejected a proposed pay deal for a second time. The Northern Ireland Teachers' Council, which represents the teaching unions in negotiations with management, said members were still not prepared to accept the 5.5% uplift offer. Teachers rejected an initial offer in February. A new offer was tabled by management last week and included what was described as an enhanced package of commitments around reducing workload, but it was again rejected. Teachers in Northern Ireland have been taking industrial action short of strike during the dispute. Members of several unions have already voted in favour of strike action if the impasse is not resolved. Full details of the story can be found online. In Sunderland, the city's university has had its new £10 million campus officially opened by the Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson. Phillipson is also the city's MP. The new facility is located at the university's London site, close to Canary Wharf. Set to train the business leaders, financiers and NHS workforce of the future. The report in the Sunderland Echo details commentally positive impact this Sunderland has had on and to see the university expanding out. Among academic courses on offer, the new Harbour Exchange campus aims to provide qualifications and opportunities to hundreds of nurses over the next 5 years. Meanwhile, online news and comment site The Tab features research by The Telegraph which suggests that there are more people with depression and anxiety in places with lots of students. According to the online article, 4 cities with Russell Group universities stood out as having high numbers of people seeking support for mental health. Experts have suggested a number of reasons for university students experiencing poor mental health, including the rise of social media, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the cost of living crisis and other financial worries. The cities included in the report are Leeds, Bristol, Liverpool and Nottingham. Deadline News Agency also explores this issue. It focuses on Edinburgh University's decision to bring alpacas onto campus in an effort to tackle anxiety. The university holds regular Pause Against Stress sessions where dogs visit students, and alpacas have also returned for a second time. The animals first appeared in 2022 and have returned to support students as they approach their final exam period. Sky News covers new evidence from the Office of the Children's Commissioner for England, which suggests that children who are repeatedly uprooted from their homes go on to achieve fewer GCSEs. The article says that for the first time, research proves the negative impact housing insecurity has on educational attainment. Each additional address move was linked to a fall in achievement of the accepted standard of 5 GCSE passes, including English and Maths at grade 4. Only half of the children who moved 3 times between reception and year 11 went on to achieve the 5, compared to 65% for those with 1 home address in the same period. This fell to 1 in 10 amongst those who moved 10 times throughout their education. The report goes on to cover the further impact on those moving between a series of temporary accommodation and the links with child poverty and the increasing gap between disadvantaged children and their non-disadvantaged peers. Full details can be found on the Sky News website. Finally, the Mail Online covers the story of 2 parents who sold their family home and quit their jobs to travel the world with their 3 children. The article describes the family of 5 as modern-day nomads who have travelled to Thailand, China, Malaysia and Dubai whilst homeschooling their children. The parents believe their children are better off travelling the world than attending traditional schools, as they have no faith in the UK education system, but that the children do follow the national curriculum. When asked about their children missing out on friendships, both parents said they weren't concerned as the benefits outweighed the downsides. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Thank you, Joe. Really interesting roundup as we have every week. It's a nice dream, isn't it, to, I don't know, load up a camper van and trail around the world. That is always something that I wanted to do. And, you know, as somebody who believes that language and culture are both very much at the bedrock of what our curriculum ought to be, I think that these children have been afforded a wonderful opportunity, and, you know, good on their parents for having the means to make that work. You know, I don't know what the parents do for for their own work, but good on them for being able to provide that for their children. It does, of course, hurt as a teacher to hear people decry the state of our education system. And I think, it is an important lesson. It was an important lesson to me, kind of with that punch to the ego, when Joe stated the parents' reasoning for that. It is important to remember that as teachers, we are doing our best with what we have. And kind of like I said before the news, we do it always with good intentions, trying to do our very best, following the curriculum that we are mandated to follow. During the news, Aaron Miller texted in a very good morning to you. He just agreed that, or she. I apologize, Aaron, for assuming. In my head, Aaron is a male name, but I know that it can be used for women as well. So I do apologize. But Aaron texted in to say, doing something with good intentions works out the best. And I think that's true. I think, good intentions alone don't lead to the very best outcome. But I think if you always genuinely believe that you're doing your best, you're not claiming that you're doing your best whilst acting in bad faith, then that's always a good starting point. If you want to text in like Aaron did, then you can. If you are listening live via Podbean, you can text in straight into the app. I will read your message out on air, as I did with Aaron's just then, and we can discuss today's topic, which is asking for help. That way, if you want to engage but are not listening live, or you are listening live elsewhere, then you can always get in touch with me via X, via Blue Sky. I am at Mr. D Lester, that's MRDLESTER, on both platforms, and we can engage that way. But we are talking about asking for help today, because we are at the time of year that is the most difficult to be in schools. And I think, based on a few things that I've been reading internationally this week, this is true in lots of school systems that kind of have an August-September start, the same as we do in the UK. So I think, lots of people are struggling at the moment. Lots of people are ready for the Easter holidays. Our children certainly seem to be ready for the Easter holidays. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to check in and just talk about what it means to ask for help, and kind of talk about why it can be so difficult. So the bulk of the show today is based around an article that was published in 2024 by Penny Moises, who was the founder of the Clean and Tidy Home show. She did a blog post on asking for help that I found really interesting. And I've kind of used that as the bedrock of today's show, whilst building on kind of my other reading and my other thoughts around that. It can be a challenge to admit when we need help. And a lot of that comes down to our society's lionization of self-sufficiency and independence. We are trained from a very young age, we are encouraged from a very young age to be independent, to look after ourselves. I have seen, kind of not related to this topic, but just in other conversations, I have seen current Western society, particularly Anglophone society, English-speaking society, deemed hyper-independent. We kind of assume that any kind of reliance on anybody else is a bad thing. And, we are deemed to be functional members of our society when we can do pretty much everything on our own, which is not the same across the world. We don't see the same sort of hyper-independent mentality in China, for example, amongst native populations in the USA, in Australia. So, it is something that very much seems to have come about as part of the Industrial Revolution, I suppose, and kind of the capitalism that came with it, and that self-sufficiency that I can now provide for myself. I'm going to go out and get a job which pays enough money to feed me and my family, and that's it. And so kind of as jobs became more automatic, as communities became smaller, we started to no longer rely on other people. We didn't need to rely on other people so much anymore. We didn't need to grow our own food. We didn't need to barter. But what then happened was the independent people, the ones who could be self-sufficient, they came to be seen as the more successful. I guess because, I don't know, maybe they had higher paying jobs originally, so they needed other people less than some others in the community. And then that kind of became the gold star, didn't it, among our own communities, among our own culture, this idea that we can be super independent. But that's not how it's always been. And realistically, that's not how a functional society works. The whole point of a society is that we do work together, at least on some things, and we do help each other out when we need it. So, there has been this interesting shift. And I think it is important for us to remember that this hyper independence hasn't always been the default measure of success. Even within our own countries, within our own cultures. And I'm not always sure that it's a good thing that we pretend that it has been. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that we all need to go exactly the other way and become hyper-dependent on each other. As with anything, as with everything, there is a really nice middle ground that I think we need to work towards. But we do need to work back towards that middle, I think, away from being hyper independent, and going, do you know what? I can't actually do this on my own. I'm going to be more successful if I ask somebody else for help. And so that's what I'm going to do. But it is hard to ask for help. There is, for many people, that mental block that stops you from asking for help, even from family, even from best friends. It can be really difficult to just say, hey, I need something. Could you do that for me? Could you help me with it? And I wanted to know why. So I found this article by Stanford social psychologist Xuan Zhao. And she said there are several common reasons why people struggle to ask for help. Some people may fear that asking for help would make them appear incompetent, weak, or inferior. Now, I think that this is one of the reasons why teachers find it really difficult to ask for help. We are used to being the ones who are in control, in charge, who know what we're talking about. We are the experts in our classroom. Amongst our young people, we know the most about the topic that we are teaching. That's why we're the ones teaching it. So we're not used to seeming like we don't know what we're doing. And that can be a bit of an attack on the ego, a bit of an attack on the sense of self, when you have to admit that you don't know something, that you need help with something. And I think quite often as teachers, a lot of our identity is wrapped up in our competence. Actually, I say as teachers, I know that not everybody who listens to Saturday Morning Breakfast show is a teacher. I think in whatever profession you might be in, a big part of your sense of professional identity is wrapped up in your professional competence. And I think to then ask somebody else for help feels like you are admitting that you are less competent than you are than you project yourself to be. And it can feel like you then start inviting questions about whether you should actually be in your job or not. But I think, and I'll talk about this a bit later, but I think it's important to remember that other people don't see it that way. Other people's identities are not as attacked as your own by you asking for help. Going back to this article by Xuan Zhao, she said that recent research from Stanford doctoral student Kayla Good uncovered that children as young as 7 years old can feel like they are incompetent, weak, or inferior by asking for help. And that shocked me a little bit. You know, I taught primary, I trained primary. And so, you know, I know how little these kids are. I know how young they are. I know how limited their life experience is. And so it shocked and saddened me a little bit to think that there are 7-year-olds who think that they should already have all the answers and that they are going to be seen as less because they are asking for help. Xuan Zhao went on to say that some people are concerned about rejection when they ask for help. They're concerned about being told no. That can be really difficult, I think. On both sides, because when you are the person who is asked for help, you don't want to say no because you don't want the other person to feel rejected. And that can then lead to a really weird dance, can't it? Where you've got somebody who is asking for help, somebody else who doesn't have the skill maybe, or the capacity or the time or whatever it is to be able to help. And so they're both kind of avoiding each other for fear of rejection for all sorts of reasons. So I think that can be something that is quite difficult to negotiate, but maybe is why it's all the more important to ask for help from people that you are close to, from people that you can have very open conversations with, so that the dialogue there is open for somebody to say, actually, no, I don't have the capacity to help you right now. I'm really sorry. Can we come back to this in a week when I've got some more time? And then that way, you as the person asking for help can go, yep, that's fine, and not feel like you are being rejected. That relates to a further reason that Xuan Zhao says that people don't ask for help, and that is the concern about burdening or inconveniencing somebody else. And again, I think this is very prevalent in schools. In schools, we love to talk about how busy we are. We love to talk about how we don't have time for anything. And that becomes the pervasive narrative within a school, that we are all far too busy. We are all far too stretched for time. And so we can't really do anything outside of our bubble. And it's true, we are very busy in schools. We are very stretched for time in schools. But the more we repeat that, and the more that becomes our kind of lived reality or our created reality, the more we are saying to other people, I'm sorry, I don't have time to help you. So the smaller our community becomes because we're not making the time to help other people who might need help. And we are not prioritizing the idea that helping each other is going to make our school a better place both to teach in and to learn in. So I do think that as a profession, we've got a bit of soul searching to do about the way we create the narrative of how busy we are. Making sure that, yes, we continue to fight that stereotype that we work 9 till 3 babysitting kids and that's all we do. But at the same time, making it very clear that we're not too busy to create a safe space within our communities for our colleagues, for our peers to ask for our help. if you think about it, that's kind of the complete opposite that this coaching drive that has been in vogue for the past couple of years is going for. You know, a lot of schools, I'm going to be quite cynical and say as a money saving measure, are turning to internal coaching rather than external CPD experts coming in as a way of providing CPD. And so, you know, we are expected to coach each other and we are expected to be coached by each other. In my previous school, the first push that they had to introduce a coaching model of CPD, it didn't work out very well because nobody wanted to admit to their colleagues that they needed help with something. And everybody trotted out the "we're too busy to coach or to be coached" line. And so, you know, I think the more we are resistant to asking for help, the less successful any kind of push for internal coaching is going to be. Paul has texted in, good morning to you, Paul. Really glad to have you here with us this morning. Paul has said, unless you have a great head teacher, in my experience, showing that you need help is a weakness as a teacher. It shouldn't be, but you can be made to feel like you failed somehow. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it kind of loops back, doesn't it, to what I said a couple of minutes ago about how we are perceived by our competence. We create our own kind of teacher identity based on our competence. And because we don't want to let the kids down, and because people like head teachers, you know, senior management, they don't want to be seen to be letting the kids down either, any kind of perceived weakness or admitted weakness is grounds to be, I don't know, I don't want to say attacked, but in some cases it can feel that way, depending, of course, on how well your head teacher, your senior management, your line manager, whoever it is, deals with your request for help. And I think, as I've said a few times on the show before, that's kind of the exact opposite of what we want. That's the exact opposite of what I think a high quality school and a high quality teacher ought to be. I've always said that the minute you are the teacher that thinks that they know everything that there is to know about teaching, that's the time for you to retire. Because there are always new pedagogies coming out. Yes, we get the same pedagogy repackaged, repurposed. You know, we joke about that. We've all been on the treadmill. We've all seen the cycles, but there are new pedagogies. There are new discoveries in how the brain works. There are new things for us to uncover and for us to try out. And I think, you know, unless you're willing to say, actually, my behavior management isn't as good as it could be, or even my behavior management is shocking, I need some help, then you're not going to uncover these new things. You're not going to find the thing, you're not going to find the tool that is going to make you the very best teacher you can be. And so I think, Paul, you're absolutely right. It does take a school community to be supportive of each other and supportive of this idea that identifying areas for improvement is not the same as being a bad teacher. It's the same as going, I'm not the best teacher that I can be. I'm not at the top of my game, but I would like to be. So how can I get there? And let's be very honest, we expect this of our kids. You know, I get let's take my GCSE Latin class at the moment, for example. You know, I teach them, they do their activities, but if they still don't understand their past subjunctive, I'm going to want them to admit that to themselves, I don't get this, and then tell me that they don't understand it so that I can help them. And I don't look down on my students for not getting it. I don't judge my students for not getting it. I find another way to explain it to them so that they do get it. And if that's how I'm treating my children, then that's how I, as a head of department, want to be treating my staff. And that's how I would hope head teachers would want to treat their staff. But Paul, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, that's not the reality for many schools. And that's why communities of practice that we're going to talk about a little bit later on are so important in this. The good news, according to Stanford social psychologist Xuan Zhao, is that very often the concerns that we have about asking for help, and now we're talking in the broader sense rather than in perhaps specific negative interactions that we may have had with leadership in the past, or even parents in the past. There's an episode of Abbott Elementary where one of the main characters is called the worst teacher that this parent has ever seen. Because, we know that parents like to pass judgment on the quality of teaching. That's their prerogative, I suppose. And that, I suppose, is another reason why teachers find it quite difficult to ask for help, is because we can find ourselves criticized from all sides, from our peers in the school, from our senior leaders in school, from our pupils, from our parents, and you leave yourself being quite vulnerable if you're not very careful about the way in which you go about asking for help. But I think that says a lot more about the toxicity in terms of how teachers are perceived than it does about in anybody's ability to actually ask when they need help. So, according to Zhao, what most people misunderstand when they ask for help is that other people don't see them in the way that they see themselves in that moment. They quite often are so caught up in their own feeling of failure, in their own feeling of inadequacy, that they actually don't recognize the pro-social motivations of other people who are ready to help them. And I think that is really important to keep in mind. Some people do actually want to help you. Some people might already see the same deficiency that you have noticed in your own practice. They have ways to help. They don't want to bring it up because they don't want you to feel badly about it, and they are waiting for you to ask. Some people may not have seen the deficiency that you've perceived because it is just down to your perception, but will be willing to help anyway because they understand that, you feeling that you're bad at something is just as valid as you being objectively bad at it. So there was an experiment conducted where people either directly interacted with each other to seek and offer help, or they imagined or they recalled experiences in which they asked for help. And the observers in this Stanford experiment observed that the help seekers always underestimated how willing strangers and even friends were to help them out, and how positively the helpers felt about that experience afterwards. The help seekers also massively overestimated how inconvenienced the helpers would feel. So a lot of those things that we talked about at the top of the show that are the mental blocks for asking for help, being seen as lesser, inconveniencing other people, not wanting to be rejected, they mostly stem from the fact that we are in the eye of the storm of our problem. And we are feeling that problem a lot more acutely than anybody else is. And that then compounds all of the negative feelings. Whereas actually, by and large, people are more willing to help than we might suggest. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is going to be willing to help. That doesn't mean that the people who are willing to help always have the time to drop everything there and then to give you a hand. And that doesn't mean that we should expect people to do that. But what it does mean is that quite often, when we are building up these scenarios where we're going to be violently rejected by our closest friend because we have dared ask them to, help us move, that's probably not going to happen.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Psychologist Dale Miller, who also works at Stanford, showed that when we think about what motivates other people, we tend to apply a very pessimistic, self-interested view of human nature. And again, this kind of ties into what we were talking about a few minutes ago with kind of Western society, industrial societies being that bit less community centered and valuing that hyper independence. And so that means, again, when we think about asking somebody else for help, even though we know that person really, really well, we know that they are not pessimistic or particularly self-interested. We assume that they are going to take that approach. And so we assume that they are going to say no. We kind of assume that asking somebody else to go out of their way to do something may seem wrong. It may seem selfish. It may impose a negative experience on the helper. But of course, now we know, based on the other experiments performed by the Stanford psychologists, that in most cases, the opposite is true. And the helper actually wants to help out. Work by psychologist Jamil Zaki has shown that empathizing with and helping others in need seems to be an intuitive response. And there are a ridiculous number of studies that found that people often feel happier after they conduct acts of kindness. So if you feel like you have been of benefit to somebody else, you will quite often feel happier about yourself and more secure within that relationship with somebody else. These studies tend to be based on the work of Professor Frank Flynn and his colleagues that suggested that people overestimate how likely their direct request for help would be rejected. Because again, we tend to take a pessimistic view of ourselves and suggest that, any request for help that we personally have is going to be rejected. We are not worth this person's time, this person's capabilities. But as we've said, lots of research shows that seeking advice, seeking help can quite often boost not only self-esteem, but how competent the help seeker is seen by the advice giver. Now, this might seem a bit counterintuitive, particularly when we take into account what Paul has said about needing that kind of very supportive structure. But if you think about it, asking for help is a reflection on your ability to be self-interrogative. It's a reflection on your ability to sit down and think about your practice and go, actually, this is an area that I need help in. And it shows that you want to be doing your very best. A complacent teacher, a teacher that doesn't really care, a teacher that is just there for the money, probably needs to go and get another job, but they won't be interrogating their practice, finding flaws and finding the help for it, finding the ways to solve it. And so, again, this isn't true of all people. And so I think, you know, we're not going to live in a Pollyanna bubble about it. We do have to be quite careful about the people from whom we request help, because not everybody is on your side. I have in the past worked with people who have turned out to be highly toxic, and I didn't see it at the time. And working with those people, asking for their help, was used as a way to try and downplay my own competencies. But those people are few and far between, and eventually those people kind of tell on themselves. But again, if you build your own community, your own reciprocal community, then that's a way that you can kind of take control of that and stop those negative experiences from happening. Paul has said, I've known teachers who have done their best with disruptive pupils to be blamed by SLT for the pupil violently attacking somebody else, climbing tables, swearing at staff, etc. Absolutely. And I think this, again, it comes down to the SLT's view of self in that case. That is where they are kind of recognizing that their own sense of identity is being attacked because the people that they've hired that they think are competent are not coping. They haven't put the correct things in place to help those teachers that need the help. And then so the easiest thing for them to do is attack the teacher instead of turning around and saying, actually, I failed to do my job at making sure this teacher is the best thing that the best teacher that they can be. Yeah, we do quite often get blamed for what's going on in our classrooms. And I think there are different things at play when we think specifically about pupil behavior. You know, we need to think about the society at large that is permitting these behavioral issues. We need to think about individual school policies that is permitting these behaviors. We need to think about what is happening higher up at management level, about the people who are going into management without being able to demonstrate that they have the people skills to help the teachers who need help and to deal with the pupils who may be being disruptive, where it is the pupil that is the issue and not the teacher. This this could be a whole other show, and it should be, because there are lots of issues, and I think this is one of the difficult things about the kinds of shows that we do here on Teachers Talk Radio, because we take our topics and we tend to talk about them in semi-isolation. But of course, there are all kinds of intertwining issues that need to be resolved in order for us to be able to do our jobs effectively. But let's think about how we can get better then at asking for help, at how we can get the advice that we need in order to become the very best teachers that we can be. But before we do that, I have a word of warning for you, and that is, don't fall for flattery. In my research for today's show, I read an article that I'm not going to name because I do think it came genuinely from a place of wanting to help. But in reading it, it felt very much like it was using flattery as a way of reinforcing a victim narrative of people who wanted to ask for help. This article was chock full of platitudes like, oh, you don't want to ask for help because you give too much. You don't want to ask for help because everyone has always let you down. You don't want to ask for help because you are strong and independent. I'm not sure that any of those things are actually true. Or if they are true, I think they are true in a way that they are putting a flattering spin on something that is slightly more negative. You don't want to ask for help because you give too much is true of everybody. Everybody feels that they give a lot. Everybody feels like they give more than they take. This has been one of the really interesting things, I think, about the rise in social media over the last 20 years. We do have a much bigger insight into other people, like complete strangers, than we ever did before. And, you know, I've talked on the show before about how I don't like to work in silence. So I will always have something on in the background, usually YouTube. And, you know, it will start off with a video that I choose. And then I will kind of get engrossed in work and the algorithm will take over. So I quite often end up with all kinds of random nonsense playing in the background. But what that does mean is that I've had videos from people of all genders, of all ages, of all walks of life popping up on my TV. And quite possibly all of them have talked about how much they give and how helpful they are. So, you know, this idea that we don't want to ask for help because we give too much is true, but it's true for everybody. And so, you know, the people that you are reluctant to ask for help from will also be thinking that they don't want to ask for help because they give too much. But they will also be thinking, as we've talked about, how good it feels to give. You know, they give so much because they like to do it. And so it's really important, I think, for us to keep that in mind when we have those conversations. When we remember that people do actually, by and large, want to help. You don't want to ask for help because everyone has always let you down. That was the second platitude. First of all, is that true? Has everyone always let you down? If that is true, I suggest that you need to find some more friends. But also, is that true, or is that just your fear of rejection talking? Because what this article did was it took what the Stanford psychologists have been saying, that people don't want to ask for help because they fear people letting them down, they fear people saying no, and they're turning it into that is what always happens. But as an absolute, always, that's very, very unlikely. And again, if it is, then you need to think very carefully about the people who are in your circle and find some help to get other people in your life. And finally, you don't like to ask for help because you are strong and independent. Well, we've talked about that. We've talked about how that's what our society lionizes. But that kind of spin is feeding into that quite toxic narrative of it's best to be strong and independent, therefore don't ask for help. Now, that is the way that some people view the world. You know, as Paul has drawn attention to, there are members of management, members of leadership who prescribe to that view. But when it comes down to it, you've got to figure out whether what they think of you is actually important, whether their view that you should be strong and independent is important to you. If it is, then by all means, do not ask for them for help. Ask somebody else, someone who's not going to throw your independence or lack thereof in your face, or somebody whose opinion you don't really care about, but that you know can help you. So all of those kind of flattery articles, I do think that most of them come from a good place, because I think a lot of them want to rationalize why we don't ask for help in a positive way. But I do also think that they are symptomatic of toxic positivity, where we can't think badly about ourselves and where we can't think, oh, I don't want to do this because I'm scared of being rejected. It's easier to think, I don't want to do this because I've always been rejected, because we don't want to think of ourselves as being irrational. We don't want to think of ourselves as not understanding the objective truth behind things. And so it's really hard to admit that we're scared of being rejected, even though we've got no reason to believe that we might be. It's much easier to spin a narrative that we are being rejected. So, all that said, how do we ask for help? Let's set up a situation where we need something. I don't know, maybe we need some coaching on something. Maybe we are moving and need somebody with a van to come and move our sofa. Maybe, I don't know, just drawing on my own experience, we have just written some chapters of a textbook and we need somebody to proofread it for us. How do we go about asking people to do these things for us? Step number one is to stop making assumptions. Andy Lopata in 2022 wrote that people might not want to help you, people might not be able to help you, people might be too busy to help you, and people might not know how to help you. Those are all very real possibilities. But you've got to let those other people decide for themselves. Don't make those decisions for them. Don't self-reject. Don't already decide that somebody else is too busy, too unable, too disinterested to help you. Don't assume that you're going to get a negative response, because that is an assumption, not a knowledge. Unless you're Mystic Meg, or not Mystic Meg, but somebody with similar powers who has not given me the lottery numbers, and I really think that you ought to. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. So don't take away somebody else's independence. Don't take away somebody else's sovereign right to make a decision for themselves by not asking for help. They have the right to say no. Hopefully they have the ability to say no. That's a slightly different topic, isn't it? Is when you know that somebody struggles to say no when you ask for help, and you don't want to take advantage of that. But don't take away somebody else's opportunity to help you, because they might want to. And as we've seen from all of those Stanford experiments, chances are they do want to help you. And even if they don't know how, they might be aware of resources that can. I mentioned not too long ago that one of my closest friends lost one of his parents quite recently. And that kind of grief is not something that I am in any way, shape, or form qualified to help with. What I am qualified to do is recognize when I don't know something and find out about it. So my way of being able to help was by offering websites and phone numbers and articles and other places that would be more qualified than I am to actually provide help that is needed. And when that came, I don't remember whether I was asked for that or whether I offered it. Let's be honest, I probably offered it because I always just put my nose in. But when it came down to it, I was happy to help where I could, recognizing my own limitations, and that actually if I tried to do any kind of grief counseling, I would probably just make stuff worse. But I was able to do what I could to overcome my own limitations. And other people may be able to do that too. If your work best friend is also not some kind of behavior management guru, they may know what course you can go on to help you. Your line manager may not have their own marking sorted, but they may have made that their own target for this year and take you along on the same course that they've booked themselves on. So we may not always know the exact right people to ask for help, but asking somebody might eventually get us to the right place. The psychology of putting intentions onto people is actually really interesting. And it all comes down to that preservation from rejection. So if we do get a negative response, we quite often view that as a rejection. We compartmentalize that as a rejection. People don't like to be rejected, so we don't ask because that's safer. But what that does is it stops us from ever being rejected, so we never build up that resilience to it. And what we end up doing is just kind of living in this bubble where we're not living our best lives because we're not asking other people to help us with things that we need help in. And we're also not living our best lives because we are living in constant fear of rejection. So we're just kind of screwing ourselves over no matter what happens. Whereas if we stop assuming that people will say no, but we make it clear that it's okay if they do, and we communicate to them that they can say no, and that will be a valid answer, what that does is it communicates it to yourself, because what you are doing is you are saying to them and to you, it's okay if you say no, because I've already decided that you would say no, so I'm not asking you, so I'm actually not in a worse position by asking. You've prepared yourself for the fact that they might say no. You've rationalized the fact that it's going to be a wash whatever happens, and then you might get your yes. So if you kind of almost take control of that no and go, if the no comes, I'm prepared for it, you might put yourself in a position where you get a yes. And I think that takes a lot of self-work. I think that takes a lot of training. That's something that I'm still needing to do, to go, I don't want this rejection, I don't want this no, but I can kind of take control of my own reaction to that situation by saying the no might come and that will be okay. We also have to remember that a no isn't a rejection. It is okay that somebody else doesn't have time to help you. It is okay that somebody else doesn't have the resources to help you. It is okay that somebody else has something else going on in their life and so they're not able to help you in that moment. That doesn't reflect their feelings about you. It just reflects what is going on in their own lives in that moment. And so it is okay to be told no. They are not rejecting you. They probably feel badly that they are saying no. They've just got other things going on. If you have always been let down by other people, then it's a good idea to reflect on why that might be. Reflect on who the people you are asking for help are, whether they are the right people to be asking for help or the wrong people to be asking for help, and find those right people. Step 2 in being able to ask for help is redefining how we see strength. As we've said a few times throughout this show today, in our society we tend to define strength as independence, and we tend to define dependence, asking for help, as a weakness. But one of the first steps towards embracing help is to redefine our own concept of strength. Instead of suggesting that we are the best teachers we can be because we know everything there is to know, which is impossible, so we lie to ourselves and to other people about the quality of our practice, and we pretend that everything is awesome all of the time. We can spin that narrative, even if just to ourselves, and say strength is realizing that I can't do something and wanting to be better at it, getting the means to be better at it. And as a social constructivist, I believe that the way to be better at something is to ask somebody else to help me figure it out, because knowledge is co-constructed. So strength can be defined as the capacity to acknowledge your own limitations, because not a single one of us knows everything, and to seek help when we need it. Step number 3 is to break the stigma. So our society often attaches a stigma to asking for help because of the implied incompetence. And what we need to do is break free of those societal expectations and understand that everybody encounters obstacles. Now, some of them might not be as strong as we are, and some of them might pretend that they don't encounter obstacles, or they will ignore the obstacles. They're not strong enough to go, I want to be better at this, and so I'm going to ask somebody who is better than me to help me. And that's really sad for them, to be honest. That's really sad for them. But we don't have to be like that. We can break that stigma, and we can say seeking support is common, and it's a healthy part of the human experience. If we normalize the act of asking for help, then we can create a more compassionate, a more understanding community, or sub-community, or whatever it may be. Step number 4, I think, is the hardest, and it's going to be the hardest thing for our young people. So if we think about how we can encourage our young people to ask for help, step number 4 is going to be really difficult, and it's being specific about your needs. What actually do you need help with? How often have we been in class and a kid has said, oh, I don't understand this, and you say, oh, okay, so what are you struggling with? And they go, I don't know, or all of it. And that then leaves you as the teacher baffled as to how to help them, because you don't know where it is they are tripping up. It's the same with us. I keep coming back to behavior. Behavior management is broad. So saying I'm struggling with behavior management isn't actually very helpful, and isn't going to get a very helpful response. It might even get, oh, that's a shame, but I'm really sorry, I'm really busy, I can't help you right now. Whereas if you're a bit more specific and you say, oh, I'm really struggling with managing the behavior of my bottom set year 10s. Or I'm really struggling with how to get the kids to settle at the beginning of my lesson. So you pick out specifically what you need help with. Then you might get some compassion, some empathy. Oh, I'm really struggling with bottom set year 10 too. Maybe we should think about how we can solve that problem. And you can create some collaboration. You might get an offer for more practical help. Well, let me come and observe you with bottom set year 10, and I'll see if I can figure out what's going wrong. Or you might get some training. Oh, here's a course on starters that you can go to. See if that'll give you some ideas that will help them to settle. Because if we're very specific about what we need help with and we make it a very specific task, then the person who is too busy to help us in a general sense might be able to find the time. Because let's be honest, when you say, I need help, or when somebody else says to you, can you help me? There is this gut reaction that it's going to be a very time-intensive activity. Help seems like it needs a lot of time. Whereas if you're very specific about the type of help you need, I need help with my bottom set year 10, then that can become much more manageable, because an observation and then a 30-minute meeting afterwards to discuss it might help. So if we are specific about what we need, we actually lower the chances of being rejected, because we are giving the person that we're asking for help more information about how they can help us in a more efficient, more timely manner. Zhao suggests that we phrase our requests for help using the SMART criteria. So making them specific, meaningful, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. Now, I'm going to be honest, I always bristle a little bit when I read the SMART criteria, because I think that they are so overused in school that they've lost all meaning. That's on me. I need to redefine my relationship with SMART criteria. But if we just are super specific about what we need help with, even if that means we're going to people with lots of small subtasks to help a broader problem, we are going to be more likely to get that help. Finally, and this kind of comes back to what I've been saying in response to kind of Paul's messages about how to deal with unsupportive leadership. It's about creating a community of practice. Now, a few weeks ago at Teacher Talk Connect, I talked about this, and I talked about the importance of community of practice, about finding your tribe, finding a group of people who have your same goals, your same values, your same attitudes, and creating a community within them. It's kind of like we do with TTR MFL Journal Club, where I've created this community of people who are interested in the research into MFL teaching, and we get together once a month and we talk about it, we discuss it, and that helps to improve our practice. But building a strong support network is crucial for both seeking and receiving help. Because if you know that your SLT is not going to be helpful, the more you go to them and ask for help and then get rejected, the more downtrodden you start feeling, the more negatively you start feeling. Whereas if you surround yourself with people who genuinely care about your well-being, so you look at your circle of friends and you figure out whether you are actually friends or whether you are just proximity friends, or whether in fact you are only friends because this one person consistently needs something from you and you don't get anything out of that friendship, then you can think about whether the people around you are going to be willing to lend a hand. And again, I'm not saying that you should only seek out friends who are useful. that you are only to seek out friends who can help you. We don't want to be users. But if anything, all of this Stanford research that I've been reading this week has taught me that people do want to help. And so if you have got a circle, a community of trusted people who genuinely care, then they're going to want to help you, just as a natural reaction to that caring. So we cultivate our relationships based on trust and on reciprocity. Creating a reliable support system is going to not only give you the opportunity to ask for help when you need it, but it can also enhance your overall mental and emotional well-being. And let's be honest, people relate to each other in different ways. So if we've got a senior leadership team who don't seem to be relating very well to us asking for help with our behavior management, maybe they'll relate better to somebody else in our group who might be able to go up to them, sidle up to them in the staff room and say, oh, I've noticed that bottom set year 10 are a bit of a pain in period 5 on a Wednesday. What can we do about that? And they might then get a better reaction. Because creating community means that you can rely on the skills, the expertise, the other relationships, the other communities of the people within your own. So the best way, I think, to ask for help is to make sure that you are surrounded with people who align with what you need, because they will be willing to give the help, so long as you are also willing to give help when they need it too.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So that brings us to the end of today's show. Asking for help is hard. Asking for help is hard. But hopefully, if it is something that you struggle with, then some of the things that we have spoken about today will have resonated and maybe will have given you the tools to empower yourself to ask for the help that you need in order to become the very best version of yourself that you can be. Because ultimately, that's what we want out of life, isn't it? Is to make sure that we are the very best teachers, parents, uncles, aunts, readers, whatever it might be. And we can do that by helping each other out. Please do stay tuned here on Teacher Talk Radio, because we have got Famida coming up at 1 o'clock today. Then we have got Points of View first thing tomorrow morning, followed by Graham at 1 p.m. and Chris Fowles at 8 p.m. So it is a packed weekend of shows here on Teacher Talk Radio. If you are an MFL teacher, then please do tune in to my live show at 6 p.m. on, I need to double check what day it is, actually, before I say, hold on, just give me 1 second. I thought I was going to be able to do that really smoothly and kind of find my day while I was talking, but I have not been able to do that. There is a day next week, I think it's Wednesday. There is a day next week that I am hosting a show sponsored by the British Council talking about MFL assistance. So please do join that one if you can. We will be posting out all of the information on Teacher Talk Radio socials over the next couple of days. If you are unable to join me for that one, I will look forward to having breakfast with you next Saturday morning. Have yourselves a great rest of the day, a great weekend, a great week. Thank you very much and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.